I flew into America and immediately was met in an Aston Martin DBR4, an ex-works team car, owned by Newton B. Davis, who in partnership with Peter Polar ran Lotus East. They ran Lotus East, excuse me, they ran Lotus Easting, sorry, they're all at home. Ran Lotus Easting out of a little town called Militant in the state of New York, which really was just next door. And what a couple they were. Wonderful. Luke was an alcoholic racing driver, and Pete was a non-alcoholic racing driver. But the pair of them really had more respect and more desire to see Lotus succeed than even we did. Every Lotus Elan that we shipped into America for Peter Palmer, he repainted it, checked it over, put grease in the rear wheel bearings where there should be and there never was, and at the same time he fitted Brady fuel lines. And he really did a great job for us. And I was to find that in America, good quality distributors and importers have an enormous loyalty to their manufacturer that we don't have in England or Europe, to be honest. And it was a pleasure to deal with this. But they picked me up from the airport, drove me up to Militant, took me out for the evening, a few beers, a few Guinnesses, a few topless dancing girls, and then into a hotel at 1 in the morning. We'd have breakfast at 7 and get down to the contract. So I said, to hell we will. I'm going to spend a day getting to know this place and getting some sleep and trying to work out what time of day it really is. I found out later that at the Harvard Business School, they teach students how to deal with Westerners from Europe. And that is taking advantage out of jet lag. Pick them up, whirl them round, sit them down, do the business before the guy knows where. And the American military insists on 3 days before a man is allowed to make an executive decision if he comes the other way. So Harvard Business School know what they're at. They weren't going to be at me. But anyway, I sat down with Peter. I detected that the business was strong. I detected that these guys were committed. They had the money that they were prepared to put up, which was their own money, their own shares were going to put up as collateral with the bank. And so I said to Peter, which would have needed board ratification had they ever got around having a board meeting on the subject, Peter, if you can sell 10% of Lotus production in any 1 year, your contract will automatically renew. Because continuity of offtake is what you need as a car manufacturer. You can't have them all rushing up when the car's new or it's spring, and then not wanting to know about the winter time. And you also have, as a sales director of a company, probably more than any other, you have a responsibility to the guys who work there. What I sell rings the till that pays the wages in the workshop. And it's no good saying to the guys that we're laying you off for the winter because nobody wants to buy any cars. They would say, you're laying us off for the winter because you can't sell any cars. So I always had this enormous respect for our workforce. It was one of the most loyal workforces you could possibly have. One of my rows with Colin was when we had the first shareholders meeting when we were all become rich men, and I wrote into my script, because Colin would get me to write his script, and then he would read it, a part of it, and add his own bits and what have you. And I summarised by saying, without the loyal band of workers who are not here at today's shareholders gin and tonic afternoon, there would be no Lotus, there would be no prosperity for you, the shareholders, and I heartily thank them. And he left it out. And I said, Colin, why did you leave that out? He said, they get paid, don't they? Unfortunately, I had released the speech to the press in Norfolk in its entirety, so he never knew, they never knew, he didn't say it. And that's what I feel him. And so therefore, we had a situation where on the east coast of America, we got Peter Palmer tied up, going well. And Peter Palmer taught me something very interesting. He pointed out, and it applies possibly here today in the American market. I made some notes this afternoon, and I noticed that you can buy a Spree for around £86,000 and all the bits on it, $83,000. You can buy a Viper for 91. You can buy a Corvette for half that money. You can buy a Mercedes-Benz and buy a nice one for $82,000. You could buy all manner of Porsche 911s for that money, or 6 new Beetles. Now, so therefore the Esprit in today's market, which is all they have to sell, which is sad, but the Esprit at the moment is pretty well in there with the other Exotica. But Peter Pulver made a point to me. He said, yeah, the Elan today is in there with all the Exotica, and I've got my margin. But he said the volumes we'll be selling a year from now, our biggest competitor will be a used Elan. Not a used Porsche, not a used MG. The guy who wanted, let's say it would be 20,000, in those days, the guy who couldn't quite spring to 10,000 is amazed how quickly he can find one across the road for 8. And so the dealer suddenly finds he's losing sales. And that has always been the low volume specialist sports car. Its biggest competitor within 2 years is itself. By which time, of course, you put the price up. And the only thing you can do to help yourself, although you try out with a Series 2 or what have you, but the American market in particular. Now, I use the word, particularly as the boss is here, I use the word carefully.
Well, I got something to say about that. The Elise, the difference between what a Elise sells for in Europe right now, used and new, there is a difference. And you were talking about it with the 5, 6, 7, 8,000. But in the price range the Elise would be in the U.S., even on the high side of like 40,000, there's X amount of people that will just step up and buy a new car, even 3 years from now.
Yeah.
They will. I mean, when you start getting into different price ranges, I certainly think there's a lot of lease buyers here that would keep buying new ones. I don't think you could bring enough cars here to satisfy what the market is in 2 or 3 years.
You see,
And by that time they'll be through with it anyway.
there is a Lotus would probably not admit it today, but there always has been a culture of worry about the American market. And I'll now explain that. We come over to do a deal with Peter Pulver in the aftermath of something that you never would believe killed the sports car market. When Kennedy got shot, it did not seem right to go out and buy a frivolous motor car. We had exactly the same reaction in the marketplace all over Britain when Princess Di died. Now what's that got to do with frivolous purchases? But CD sales dropped right away. All manner of things. People stop taking holidays. There is some strange reaction to it. So no sooner have we got past that, and the Elan's getting good road tests in Road and Track and Car and Driver and the others, when the Mustang comes out. Now the Mustang was almost everything to everybody. And I said at the time that until the babysitter arrives in a 2-speed 6-cylinder Mustang, we've got a problem. And it was a problem. It hit sports car sales, MG, it hit us slightly. And then imagine sitting down with your dealers and saying, gentlemen, the price of your cars has gone up 20% as of tomorrow. Well, why should that be? The rate of exchange has changed. And therefore a British low-volume sports car manufacturer is the victim of sentiment. Market force he can do nothing about. He is the victim of currency changes, and he is also the victim of federal regulation changes. I came over here in 1966 with a whole lot of chassis tanks. But we sat in dealerships all over the country going bang, bang, 67, bang, bang, bang. So we revalidated them. But no, the American market, therefore, at certain levels in Lotus, we flew in Esprit S1s to California. I resigned officially from the Lotus board when it was decided to put all production over to Esprit S1 for 3 months to meet the American demand. We were flying them in. And then suddenly, they were catching fire, they were overheating, seizing, they were not a good car, and the whole thing backed up on us. So it backed up on us with 6 weeks supply of left-hand drive American Federal S1s that nobody wanted, and a back order on the British market that we couldn't meet for 2 months, and in Europe. So therefore, I had actually officially resigned over the decision to put all our eggs in one basket. So I would to this day be cautious, if I was working with a low-volume vehicle manufacturer, about the long-term prospects in the American market. It's dangerous, and there is therefore a slight culture at Lotus plus the fact you've got the Elise, which some people, I'm not sure, I don't understand the American market, but a car with no heater, no airbag, no radio, no silencing, very little weather protection, no doors, no nothing. Following what is very much the European minimalist trend, we've got minimalist engineers. And therefore, I'm not sure whether what is already happening in England. There are over 100, maybe 150 used Elise for sale in England at the moment, all over the country. They've had their summer fun, and these cars are coming on the market with 4,000 and 5,000 fun miles. So they're lovely cars. So it could well be it's a one-time, a transitory car. I think look, model loyalty to the Elise on the UK market could be 5%. Very few will buy another. Wonderful fun. They're probably into the Lotus family now. Well, we had a very interesting phenomenon, and it was right across the country. M100 Elans were selling on price parity with new Elise. This was because a nice Elan S2 with 8,000 miles on the clock was in the showroom alongside the Elise. In comes the husband and wife. So like 60% of all Elise purchases have got a female input in the UK. The wife's having it, or they're having it together, or whatever, but there's a female. They would go to the showroom, have a look at an Elise. She would wander off and say, hey, what's this over here? It's got a Lotus badge on it, it's got air conditioning, leather in the seats, electric roll-up windows, it's got a real trunk at the back, nice carpets, and it's really pretty inside. What's this? And a lot of people bought Elans as a stopgap before their Elise was delivered. So I'll just diversify. I obviously went round in circles there a bit. What I was really saying was that there is a fear among all British low-volume sports car manufacturers as to what the American market can do to you. It has slaughtered firms in the past. So there is a sort of slight reserve. Other manufacturers would, like Jaguar, now build the car with America in mind and see what they can get out of Europe. Now going back to our cash flow problems. We used to make the Lotus Cortina, and Fred Bushell, the Mark I, Fred Bushell came to me one day and said, we've got a terrible problem on the Lotus Cortina sales ground, they're just dropping off badly. We just think it's just because it's a bit near Easter and it's slowing off down. So I got one of my guys in, and I got hold of the chief accountant, and I'll get to it today. We sent this guy out with quite a lot of money, and he went all around the country ordering a Lotus Cortina. Putting a £10 deposit and disappearing into it. And Fred Bushell came to me a week or two later and said, I don't know what you did, but gosh, sales are rocketing. The only other time I sent somebody around the country, a similar thing was, I'm jumping all over the place, but I'm trying to keep my advice. I wanted to say things to the boss. That is that we did a survey of Lotus. Now, if you probably know, Ford Motor Company in England have 93% brand loyalty. 93% of their last year's customers will come back, all things being equal. So you haven't got to do too much as sales director to improve sales. You've only got to get a 10% increase and you're 3% ahead of the game. We had a 93% who'd never buy another one if we gave them away. We did this survey that clearly showed that 93% of Lotus owners would not touch another Lotus as long as they lived. And that's a pretty nasty figure. Which is why I launched the quality of drivers again. Anyway, then Motor Magazine announced they were going to do a survey of the following cars. And would owners please write in and tell them? And one of these was Lotus. So when this survey came out, we bought 150 copies of Motor Magazine and sat down with pencils, pens, ready, ink, you name it. And I sent a guy called Malcolm Ginsberg all over England to post them. And so the magazine came out that 73% of their readers would buy it.